The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chambers glittered with the light of 3 suns, as representatives from 127 species took their seats. Elder Nock, the ancient leader of the Varaxian Empire, stood at the central podium, his 6 eyes narrowing as holographic images of Earth floated before the assembly. "The evidence is clear," Nock's voice boomed across the chamber. "These humans advance too quickly. Their violence, their ambition. They will not be contained once they develop faster than light travel." His clawed hand swept through the projection, showing Earth's rapid technological progress. "We have perhaps 5 of their years before they join us among the stars. By then it will be too late." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Most species had taken thousands of years to develop the technology humans were approaching in mere decades. A blue-skinned representative rose. "But direct intervention violates our oldest laws. We have never struck a pre-FTL civilization." "Which is why we are not voting on whether to act," Nock replied smoothly. "But how to act. The containment operation has already been approved by the Security Council." In the back of the chamber, Commander Tech watched silently. As the Varaxian Empire's most decorated military leader, he knew he would be called upon to execute whatever the Council decided. His scaled skin prickled with unease. The humans had never threatened the galaxy. They hadn't even discovered it existed yet. 3 days later, Tech stood on the bridge of the Varaxian dreadnought, Inevitable Justice, orbiting Earth unseen. The planet looked peaceful from space. Blue, oceans, swirling clouds, the lights of cities twinkling on the night side. "The tectonic disruptors are aligned, Commander," his second-in-command reported. "We've targeted their 3 most populated coastal regions for maximum effect." Tech's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of discomfort among his kind. "These humans won't understand what's happening. They'll think it's a natural disaster." "Those were our orders, sir. The Council wants deniability." Tech stared at the view screen. He'd fought in 17 campaigns across the galaxy, but always against enemies who could defend themselves. This felt wrong. Still, orders were orders. "Execute the operation," he said quietly. Deep beneath Earth's crust, 3 quantum devices activated simultaneously. They looked like small silver spheres, each no bigger than a human fist, but they contained technology beyond Earth's understanding. The devices sent precise vibrations through the planet's mantle, finding fault lines and amplifying the natural tensions. In Seoul, Hana Kim was giving a lecture at the university when the first tremors hit. The building swayed violently, ceiling tiles crashing down. She rushed her students outside just as the main quake struck, 9.7 on the Richter scale, the most powerful ever recorded in Korea. The skyline of Seoul buckled and collapsed before her eyes. Skyscrapers folded like paper, bridges snapped, and the ground itself seemed to ripple like water. The screams of thousands filled the air as a cloud of dust rose over the city. Similar scenes played out in San Francisco and Rio de Janeiro. Within hours, the death toll had climbed into the millions. In orbit, Tech watched the disasters unfold through his ship's sensors. "The Council predicted they would surrender within days," he said. "Their governments will collapse from the shock." But as the days passed, something unexpected happened. Instead of falling apart, the nations of Earth united. Emergency broadcasts showed leaders from countries that had been enemies for generations working together, coordinating rescue efforts, sharing resources. 2 weeks after the attack, the United Nations convened an emergency session. Intelligence. Agencies across the globe had compared data and reached an impossible conclusion. The earthquakes were artificial. Someone had attacked Earth. Hana Kim, now the sole survivor of her family, stood before the assembly. Once a professor of astrophysics, she had been analyzing atmospheric data when the quake struck. Her findings had helped confirm the attacks came from space. "We have been attacked by a force with technology far beyond our own," she told the silent chamber. "But they made a critical mistake. They could have destroyed us completely, but they didn't. They wanted to frighten us into submission." Her voice grew stronger. "Whoever they are, they don't understand humans. We don't surrender when attacked. We fight back." The assembly erupted in applause and shouts of approval. By unanimous vote, they formed Earth's first truly unified government and military command. Admiral Hana Kim, with her background in both science and military strategy, was appointed to lead Earth's response. In her new office deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Kim studied the holographic displays showing Earth's hastily assembled defense network. It wasn't much, mostly repurposed satellites and prototype weapons that had been in development before the attack. Her aide entered with another report on the casualties. Seoul's final death toll has been confirmed, over 4 million. Including your... Kim held up her hand. She couldn't hear it again. The images of her husband and daughter remained permanently burned into her mind. Their apartment building had been one of the first to collapse. What about the space anomalies? She asked instead. Still detecting them, Mom. Definitely artificial. At least 3 massive objects in high orbit. Kim nodded slowly. The aliens were still watching, probably expecting Earth to collapse into chaos or beg for mercy. Instead, humans were doing what they always did. Adapting, preparing, planning. She looked at the prototype of Earth's first faster-than-light engine, salvaged from a crashed alien scout ship found in Antarctica decades ago. Scientists had been studying it in secret for years without success. Now, with the knowledge that alien technology definitely existed, breakthroughs were happening daily. They think they know us, Kim said softly. They think they've seen the worst we can do. Her fingers traced the outline of the family photo on her desk, taken just days before the attack. But they have no idea what humans are capable of when we have nothing left to lose. She turned to her team of generals and scientists. Her eyes were cold, focused, determined, the eyes of someone who had already lost everything that mattered. They've shown what they're capable of, she said. Now we'll show them what humans do when cornered. 6 months after the devastating attacks, Earth's diplomatic vessel Olive Branch drifted into the neutral zone between Mars and Jupiter. On board, 12 representatives from Earth's unified government waited nervously to make first official contact with the beings who had nearly destroyed their civilization. The alien ship that appeared before them dwarfed their own, a massive structure of gleaming metal that seemed to bend light around its edges. The humans gasped as the ship's hull rippled like liquid, opening to allow their much smaller vessel inside. Remember, Ambassador Yoon whispered to his colleagues, we appear weak, desperate, and most importantly, beaten. Inside the alien vessel, Commander Tech watched the humans enter the negotiation chamber. They looked exactly as he expected. Heads bowed, movements hesitant, their primitive environmental suits bulky and awkward compared to the advanced technology surrounding them. The Council was right, his aide remarked. One demonstration of power and they collapse. Tech wasn't so sure. Something about the humans' demeanor felt rehearsed. But he dismissed the thought as Ambassador Yoon began the carefully scripted surrender proceedings. What the aliens couldn't see was the microscopic scanner hidden in Ambassador Yoon's collar, mapping every centimeter of the alien ship. The seemingly primitive environmental suits contained cutting-edge analysis tools, collecting data on everything from the ship's atmosphere to the composition of its walls. Each word spoken by the aliens was being analyzed for linguistic patterns and psychological insights. This theater of surrender was precisely what Admiral Kim had planned. Back on Earth, in an underground facility beneath the ruins of Seoul, Dr. Jin Park hunched over a workstation, surrounded by fragments of alien technology. The scout ship had crashed in Siberia decades ago, kept secret by the Russian government until the attacks united Earth. Now, scientists from every nation worked together to unlock its secrets. The quantum entanglement patterns are unlike anything we've seen before, Park muttered, rubbing his tired eyes. For weeks, he had been studying the alien communication device, a crystalline structure that somehow transmitted information instantaneously across vast distances. He reached for his coffee, accidentally knocking it onto the device. As the liquid seeped into microscopic cracks in the crystal, something unexpected happened. The quantum patterns shifted, becoming erratic. Park stared in disbelief, then started laughing. It's water, he said to himself. Their technology can't handle plain water. The discovery was revolutionary. The alien materials weren't just sensitive to water, they were fundamentally incompatible with it. This explained why they had attacked from orbit rather than landing. Earth, with its water-rich environment, would be toxic to them. Across the globe in what remained of Sydney, Dr. Sue Lee worked with a different kind of alien technology, the remains of a Varaxian crew member recovered from the crashed scout ship. As Earth's leading xenopsychologist, Lee had been studying the alien's brain structure for months. The neural pathways show an interesting pattern, she explained to Admiral Kim over a secure video link. Their species evolved from pack hunters with hierarchical structures. They're literally hardwired to follow authority and maintain social order. How does that help us? Kim asked, her face grim in the blue light of the monitor. It means they're vulnerable to chaos, Lee replied, a slight smile forming. Their psychology can't process rapid, unpredictable changes. It causes a kind of neural shutdown, panic, essentially. And there's more. Their visual processing centers are heavily connected to fear responses. Certain light patterns could trigger immediate fear reactions. Kim nodded slowly. So we fight them with chaos and light shows. Precisely, Lee confirmed. Their greatest strength, their orderly, hierarchical society, is also their greatest weakness. Operation Thanatos took shape in the following months. While Earth's representatives dragged out surrender negotiations, hundreds of small, undetectable probes were launched toward key points in the solar system. Meanwhile, thousands of ordinary people, taxi drivers, teachers, maintenance workers, underwent intensive training. These civilians-turned-operatives were Earth's most daring gambit. Using recovered alien DNA, Dr. Lee's team had developed a temporary genetic modification that would allow humans to pass as various non-Varaxian species. They would infiltrate the Galactic Society, gathering intelligence and placing quantum disruptors at critical locations. The first human operatives departed. Earth, 6 months into the surrender negotiations, smuggled aboard supply ships that serviced the Galactic Council's outposts. Their mission: infiltrate the vast galactic civilization and prepare for humanity's real response. On the Varaxian homeworld, the Council had already moved on to other matters. Earth was considered handled. A minor threat neutralized before it could develop into a problem. Commander Tech, however, couldn't shake his unease. The surrender was proceeding too smoothly. The humans were asking for too many clarifications, too many delays. His concerns were dismissed. "You worry too much, Commander," Elder Nock told him during a security briefing. "The humans are simply trying to maintain some dignity in defeat. Let them have their small victories in negotiation. It costs us nothing." 1 year after the attacks, Earth unveiled its response, a fleet of apparently primitive spacecraft barely capable of reaching Mars. The ships were bulky, using obvious rocket technology, with visible weapon systems that seemed laughably inadequate against Varaxian defenses. "They're sending their military?" Tech asked incredulously, watching the small fleet's slow advance from his command ship. "With technology centuries behind ours, perhaps they feel they must make some show of resistance before accepting our terms," his second-in-command suggested. "A matter of honor." Tech frowned. Something wasn't right. The humans were intelligent enough to know they couldn't win with such outdated technology. Why waste resources on a doomed attack? "Scan those vessels again," he ordered. "There's something we're missing." But the scans showed nothing unusual, just crude spacecraft with minimal shielding and basic weapons systems. The Varaxian fleet prepared to intercept them, expecting the briefest of conflicts. Unknown to the aliens, Earth's true counterattack was already in motion. The primitive fleet was merely a distraction, exactly as Admiral Kim had planned. The Varaxian fleet commanders watched with barely concealed amusement as Earth's primitive vessels approached Mars. The ships moved slowly, their engines leaving obvious heat signatures that any first-year cadet could track. Their weapon systems were laughably outdated, simple nuclear missiles and laser arrays that couldn't penetrate even the most basic Varaxian shields. "Should we disable their propulsion systems or simply destroy them?" asked Tech's weapons officer. "Commander." Tech studied the approaching fleet with growing unease. "Disable only. I want prisoners to question." As the Varaxian ships moved into position, their sensors detected a sudden energy spike from the human vessels. Before they could react, each Earth ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, Not from Varaxian weapons, but from self-destruction. They destroyed themselves. The weapons officer stared in disbelief. Tech was about to respond when alarms blared across his bridge. Space itself seemed to ripple and tear as thousands of sleek, dark vessels suddenly appeared throughout the solar system. They were nothing like the crude rockets that had just self-destructed. These ships were smaller, faster, with designs unlike anything the Varaxians had encountered. "Impossible!" Tech's navigator shouted. "They've bypassed our detection grid. They're everywhere." Dr. Park's blind jump technology had worked perfectly by creating localized quantum tunnels that bypassed normal space. The real human fleet had appeared simultaneously at strategic points throughout not just Earth's solar system, but across all of Council space. The self-destructing decoy fleet had served its purpose, creating the perfect distraction while also generating an electromagnetic pulse that temporarily blinded Varaxian sensors. By the time those sensors came back online, humanity's true armada was already in position. On the bridge of the Earth flagship Retribution, Admiral Kim watched as tactical displays showed her fleet's perfect deployment. Dr. Park stood beside her, his face pale but determined. "Your blind jump technology worked flawlessly," Kim said, placing a hand on the scientist's shoulder. "Theory suggested it would," Park replied with a modest smile. "The quantum entanglement principles were there all along. We just needed to understand how to apply them. Once we realized water molecules could disrupt their communication systems, everything else fell into place." Kim nodded and turned to her communications officer. "Begin the broadcast. All channels, all frequencies across their entire network." Across Galactic Council space, on thousands of planets and space stations, the carefully crafted Varaxian narrative about Earth began to unravel. Every communication device, from personal terminals to massive public displays, suddenly switched to a single broadcast. The images showed the Galactic Council chambers 14 months earlier. Elder Nock stood at the podium, his actual words very different from what had been reported to Council members. "The humans have made no aggressive moves," Nock's voice echoed across 1,000 worlds. "Their technology remains primitive, but their rate of advancement threatens our dominance. If we wait until they join the galactic community, our economic models predict they will outperform Varaxian industries within 30 years. The recording continued, showing clear evidence that the Council had manufactured the threat from Earth to justify a preemptive strike, not for security reasons, but for economic ones. Humanity had been nearly wiped out, not because they posed a danger, but because they represented future competition. On the Varaxian homeworld, Elder Nock watched in horror as his private council session played on every screen. "How did they get this?" he demanded of his aides. "This was a closed session." The human infiltrators had done their work well, placing quantum recording devices throughout key galactic installations over the past year. While disguised as various non-Varaxian species, they had gathered damning evidence that the attack on Earth had been completely unprovoked. In the council chambers, representatives from dozens of races rose in protest. The Metaran ambassador, insectoid and usually calm, vibrated with rage. "We supported the containment operation because you told us these humans were preparing biological weapons to use against all non-human life." She chittered angrily. "You showed us fabricated evidence." Similar scenes played out across council space. Species that had reluctantly supported the defensive action against Earth now realized they had been deceived. Within hours, 27 races had formally withdrawn from the Council Security Pact, refusing to defend Varaxian interests against the human counterattack. Commander Tech's fleet, now surrounded by human vessels that had appeared from nowhere, received urgent communications from the Varaxian High Command. "Engage and destroy the human fleet at all costs. The security of the Empire is at stake." Tech stared at the message in disbelief. They were outnumbered 10 to 1 by ships using technology. The Varaxians didn't understand. "That would be suicide," he muttered. "Sir?" His second-in-command questioned. Before Tech could respond, his tactical officer shouted in alarm, "The human vessels are launching something, not weapons, some kind of small probes, thousands of tiny spheres, each no larger than a human fist, shot from the Earth vessels. They moved at incredible speeds, too fast for Varaxian targeting systems to lock on. Rather than attacking the Varaxian ships, they zipped past, heading directly for the jump gates that connected the solar system to the wider galactic network. They're going to destroy the gates, Tech realized, cut us off from reinforcements. But the probes didn't destroy the gates. Instead, they attached themselves to the massive structures and began transmitting. The gates, normally controlled by Varaxian operators, suddenly activated on their own. "They've hacked our transportation network," the navigator reported, voice trembling. They're redirecting all incoming Varaxian ships to random destinations across the galaxy." Within minutes, the Varaxian response fleet that was rushing to assist Tech found itself scattered across dozens of distant systems, unable to regroup or return. On the Retribution, Admiral Kim received confirmation that the first phase was complete. Earth forces now controlled the solar system, and the Varaxian reinforcements had been neutralized without firing a shot. "A direct channel to the Galactic Council chambers," Kim ordered. Her face appeared on the massive display in the council hall, where representatives from hundreds of species watched in stunned silence. Many had already seen the evidence of the Varaxian deception. Now they would hear from the humans directly. Admiral Kim spoke clearly, her voice steady and cold. "My name is Admiral Hannah Kim of Earth. Your council authorized an unprovoked attack that killed millions of my people, including my family. You expected us to surrender or die. Instead, we have taken control of your transportation network, exposed your lies, and positioned our fleet throughout your territory." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But this," she continued, "was just to get your attention. The actual revenge hasn't even begun." Panic erupted across the Galactic Council chambers after Admiral Kim's transmission ended. Representatives from dozens of species shouted over each other, some demanding immediate military action, others calling for negotiations with the humans. Elder Nock pounded his ceremonial staff against the floor. "Order! We must have order!" But his usual commanding presence had diminished. The evidence of his deception played on screens throughout the chamber, undermining his authority with every passing moment. A massive hologram flickered to life above the central podium, showing Admiral Kim once again. This time she wasn't alone. Dr. Su Li stood beside her, along with a team of humans in military uniforms. "You're wondering what comes next," Kim said, her voice echoing through the silent chamber. "You expect us to do what you would do, destroy your worlds, eradicate your species, take revenge life for life." She shook her head slowly. "That's not how humans operate. We're more precise." On cue, reports flooded in from across Varaxian space. Their orbital defense platforms were shutting down. Military vessels found their navigation systems locked, weapons offline. Command centers lost communication with field units. Within hours, the entire Varaxian military network had been paralyzed, without a single shot fired. "What kind of weapon could do this?" demanded the Varaxian defense minister, his scales flaring in distress. The answer came from the most unlikely. Source: the water fountains. In every Varaxian military installation, human infiltrators had months earlier replaced the standard purification systems with devices that added a harmless but specially engineered compound to the water supply. The compound did nothing to Varaxian biology directly, but when exposed to the specific frequency now being broadcast by human vessels, it disrupted the neural pathways responsible for aggressive decision-making and coordination. The Varaxian. Troops weren't harmed. They simply couldn't focus on combat operations. Some stood frozen at their posts, others wandered aimlessly. Many simply sat down, suddenly interested in the patterns on the floor. Commander Tech realized the implications as he watched his crew succumb to the effect. "This is..." He struggled to find the word, his own thoughts becoming cloudy. "This is elegant." On the Varaxian homeworld, billions of civilians watched in fear as their vaunted military collapsed without violence. They expected orbital bombardment to begin at any moment. Instead, human ships took position around major population centers and began a different kind of broadcast. Dr. Lee had spent months studying Varaxian psychology. She understood that their species evolved from hierarchical pack hunters, with brains wired for clear command structures. Chaos and uncertainty triggered primal fear responses. The human broadcasts exploited this perfectly. The signals contained rapidly shifting light patterns specifically designed to activate Varaxian fear centers, combined with subliminal audio that disrupted their natural hive-like coordination. The effect was immediate. Military resistance collapsed as trained soldiers found themselves unable to follow orders or coordinate actions. In the council chambers, the Varaxian representatives collapsed into their seats, eyes wide with fear, as the E-Anji broadcast reached them too. Representatives from other species watched in confusion. The signals had been calibrated to affect only Varaxian neurology. "What are they doing to them?" asked the Metaran ambassador, mandibles clicking nervously. "Exactly what they said," replied the Danebian observer. "Psychological warfare." Admiral Kim's voice came through the chamber speakers once more. "We've analyzed the neurological patterns of every major species in the Council. We have tailored responses ready for each of you. To demonstrate, the human ships adjusted their signals. The Varaxians immediately recovered, while the Metaran representatives suddenly froze, their compound eyes dilating in fear. "Stop this," Elder Nock demanded, his voice lacking its usual authority. Kim nodded to someone off-screen, and the Metarans recovered. "That was just a demonstration. We could target your entire species if we chose." The most impressive display of human precision came next. As the Council watched, live feeds showed human ships positioning themselves around the Varaxian military academy, the pride of their empire and home to over 10,000 of their most elite troops. Everyone expected destruction. Instead, pinpoint bursts of energy disabled specific systems throughout the facility: weapons, shields, communications. Within minutes, the entire academy was neutralized, its occupants unharmed but completely helpless. Similar operations played out across Varaxian space. Military installations, shipyards, defense platforms, all precisely disabled without civilian casualties. The message was clear. Humans could have killed millions but chose not to. Commander Tech, watching from the bridge of his immobilized flagship, finally understood. "They're showing restraint," he said quietly. "Not from weakness, but as a demonstration of power, true power." On Earth's main vessel, Dr. Jin Park monitored the effectiveness of his quantum disruptors. "The blind spot in their sensing technology worked perfectly," he reported to Admiral Kim. "They never detected our approach because they literally cannot perceive the quantum signature we used." Kim nodded. "And the civilian infrastructure?" "Completely untouched, as ordered," Park confirmed. "Their people will have uninterrupted power, water, and communication. They can watch their military's defeat in comfort." This was perhaps the most devastating aspect of the human strategy. While the Varaxians had tried to hide their attack on Earth behind natural disasters, humans made sure every civilian in Varaxian territory could witness their military's humiliation. The psychological impact was crushing. In the final phase of the operation, human forces secured the Council Spire itself, the massive space station where the Galactic Council convened. Elite human teams, using Dr. Park's blind jump technology, appeared simultaneously throughout the station, securing critical systems before the Council's security forces could react. The Council members found themselves surrounded, not by troops, with weapons drawn, but by calm human operators who simply took control of the station's functions. No violence, no threats, just quiet, efficient occupation. Admiral Kim, flanked by her senior staff, walked into the council chamber personally. The representatives from 127 species watched in silence as she approached the central podium. Elder Nock was still there, his usual confidence shattered. Kim surveyed the chamber slowly, making eye contact with representatives from each major species. When she finally spoke, her voice was not raised, but everyone heard her clearly. "We have disabled the military capabilities of the Varaxian Empire. We control your transportation network. We have demonstrated our ability to target specific neurological responses in each of your species." She paused. "We could end your civilizations today. Remember that when we take our seat at the table tomorrow." With that, she turned and walked out, leaving the council in stunned silence. Behind her, human technicians were already installing equipment at a newly created seat, Earth's position in the Galactic Council. The message was unmistakable. Humanity was not seeking destruction, but recognition, not vengeance, but respect. And they had earned it in the most human way possible, by showing both overwhelming power and the restraint not to use it. The great chamber of the Galactic Council gleamed under the light of artificial stars embedded in its dome ceiling. Representatives from 127 species sat in concentric rings around the central speaking platform. The atmosphere was tense, filled with whispers and nervous movements. Many seats in the Voraxian section remained empty. Their military and political leaders were still reeling from Earth's precision strikes. The massive doors slid open. Admiral Hannah Kim entered, wearing a simple black uniform with Earth's new emblem, a stylized globe encircled by stars. She walked alone, refusing the traditional escort of council guards. Her footsteps echoed across the silent chamber as she approached the podium. The newly installed Earth seat stood prominently among those of the founding species, a position normally earned after centuries of participation. No one protested its placement. After yesterday's demonstration of human capabilities, no one dared. Kim took her position at the central podium. Behind her, screens displayed images of Earth, both the devastation from the Voraxian attack and the rebuilding efforts that followed. Seoul's shattered skyline appeared, then the ruins of San Francisco, then Rio de Janeiro. The images shifted to show new structures rising from the rubble, people working together, humanity persevering. 1 year ago, Kim began, her voice calm but carrying to every corner of the chamber, your council authorized an unprovoked attack that killed 23 million humans. You expected us to surrender or perish. When we responded, you expected revenge, destruction for destruction. She tapped a control on the podium. The screen shifted to show yesterday's operation, human ships disabling Voraxian military installations with surgical precision, troops securing strategic positions without casualties, civilian infrastructure carefully preserved. Yesterday we demonstrated that we could have destroyed the Voraxian civilization, she continued. We could have done to them exactly what they did to us. But that is not why I stand before you today. A murmur ran through the chamber. Representatives leaned forward, confusion evident in 100 different alien expressions. I am here to present what we call the human doctrine. With another tap, the screens displayed a document written in standard galactic script. The foundation of this doctrine is simple: transparency, sovereignty, and proportional response. All council deliberations will be public record. All species, regardless of technological development, have the right to self-determination, and aggression will be met with measured, appropriate consequences, never genocide, never collective punishment. The chamber erupted in a chaos of voices. Some representatives shouted objections, others voiced support. The Meteran ambassador rose, her insectoid form trembling with emotion. You cannot simply rewrite our foundational principles, she chittered. The council has operated under established protocols for 12,000 cycles. Kim waited for the noise to subside before responding. Your protocols allowed for the attempted extinction of my species without cause. Your protocols are flawed. From the Denebian section, a crystalline being pulsed with blue light, their form of applause. The human speaks truth. Our secrecy has bred corruption. Perhaps it is time for change. For hours the debate raged. Kim stood calmly at the podium, addressing each concern, explaining each point of the human doctrine. She did not threaten or intimidate. She simply reasoned, persuaded, and occasionally reminded them of the alternative. Gradually the mood in the chamber shifted. Species that had been dominated by Voraxian interests for centuries saw an opportunity for equality. Younger races recognized the benefits of transparency. Even some Voraxian representatives, those not directly implicated in the attack on Earth, cautiously voiced support. By the session's end, a preliminary vote showed 73 species in favor of adopting the human doctrine, 39 opposed, and 15 abstaining. Not enough for full implementation, but a significant first step. As the chamber emptied, Kim gathered her materials. She noticed a figure waiting nearby. Commander Tech, now stripped of his military rank, his ceremonial armor replaced by simple civilian clothing. "Admiral Kim," he said, approaching cautiously. "May I speak with you?" Kim studied him for a moment, then nodded. This was the commander who had carried out the attack on Earth, who had unleashed devastation on her people, who had killed her family. Yet she felt no hatred looking at him, only a calm determination to reshape the galaxy so such actions would never happen again. "Your demonstration of power was impressive," Tech said, his voice low. "Your species achieved in months what takes others centuries. You bypassed our defenses as if they weren't there. You paralyzed our military without bloodshed." He hesitated, his inner eyelids flickering with confusion. "But what I don't understand is why. Why didn't you destroy us when you had the chance? My people killed millions of yours. Under our laws, you had every right to retaliate in kind." Kim looked up at the artificial stars twinkling in the chamber's dome. Each represented a member species of the Council, including, now, humanity. Earth's star had been added yesterday, burning bright among the oldest members. "Because that's what you would have done," she said finally. "And we are not you." She turned to face him directly. "Our revenge isn't killing you. It's forcing you to become better than you are. That's how humans fight. We don't just win the war. We win the peace that follows." Tech's expression showed he didn't fully understand. Few in the galaxy did. Humanity's approach defied conventional wisdom. "In time," Kim continued, "your people will rebuild your society within the framework of the human doctrine. Your children will grow up in a galaxy where diplomacy precedes force, where transparency prevents deception, where every species has a voice." She gathered her datapad, preparing to leave. "That is our true revenge. Centuries. From now, when Varaxians tell the story of Earth, they will have to admit that we made you better than you were. And that is a victory more lasting than any destruction could ever be." As she walked away, Tech watched her with new understanding. The humans had done something no species in the Council's long history had achieved. They had changed the rules. Of galactic power, not through domination, but through vision. Outside the chamber, Kim's team waited with news from Earth. The reverse engineering projects were advancing rapidly. The blind jump technology was being refined for civilian use. Diplomatic relations with 17 non-Council species had been established. Kim looked out the viewport at the vast expanse of stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, still rebuilding, still healing, but now recognized across the galaxy not just for its power but for its wisdom. "We've taken the first step," she told her team. "Now we build the future our fallen deserved." In the coming years, the human doctrine would transform. The Galactic Council. Former enemies would become allies, ancient rivalries would give way to cooperation. And humanity, once targeted for extinction, would lead the way. Not through conquest, but through compassion. Not through destruction, but through determination. Not by becoming like their enemies, but by remaining uniquely, defiantly human. The end.